The wedding was supposed to be a merger of blood and business, but Sung-min stopped the world when he saw the guest list. He didn't just see a missing name. He saw the erasure of the only family he had left. For years, he had been searching for his long-lost sister, Yunice, who had vanished after their parents were assassinated. He had finally found her, hidden in plain sight, working as a waitress in the very company owned by his fiancé's father. Murin, the CEO's daughter, didn't know she was bullying a mafia princess. She saw a waitress who stood too tall and looked too much like the man she wanted to marry. To clean up her wedding, she had Yunice fired, blacklisted, and literally scratched out of existence. She thought she was deleting a nuisance. Instead, she was declaring war on the man standing at the altar with her. "The wedding is over," Sung-min declared, his voice like cracking ice. He didn't just burn the marriage contract. He signaled his men to begin the takeover of the CEO's entire empire. As he walked out of the cathedral, he wasn't just a man looking for a girlfriend. He was a king going to reclaim his queen. The daughter of the CEO had tried to delete the black waitress, but she had only succeeded in bringing the full weight of the Korean Mafia down on her own head. The golden lights of the grand ballroom were beautiful, but to Yunice, they were just a reminder of how tired she was. Her arms ached from balancing a heavy silver tray loaded with crystal glasses and expensive champagne. Every day, she walked miles across these plush carpets, serving people who looked right through her, as if she were a ghost. To the wealthy guests, she was just a waitress in a crisp uniform, a nobody whose only job was to refill their drinks and stay silent. "Watch where you're going, girl," a man snapped. He didn't even look up from his phone as Yunice stepped out of his way. She didn't argue or get angry. She just lowered her head and kept moving. She had a big goal that kept her feet moving: her final law school exams. Every small tip she earned was like a tiny brick she was using to build her future. In her mind, she wasn't just a server. She was a lawyer in training. She memorized legal files while she memorized drink orders, turning her hard work into a bridge toward a better life. When her shift finally ended, the glamorous world of the hotel disappeared. Yunice walked to the small, crowded locker room and changed into her old, worn-out sneakers. She took a long bus ride to her tiny apartment, where the only decorations were stacks of heavy law books and a single lamp. This was her normal life, a constant cycle of carrying heavy trays by day and reading heavy books by night. It was a very lonely path, but she didn't feel completely alone because of one person. As soon as she sat down at her small, wooden desk, she reached for her phone. A message was already waiting for her. "Did you eat today, Yunice? Don't work too hard. I am building a world for us." It was from Min, her long-distance boyfriend. They had met online a year ago, and he had become her only escape from the cold reality of her life. To Yunice, Min was a struggling architect working hard on projects in a faraway city. They shared a quiet, digital love that felt more real than anything else. She would tell him about the rude guests and her mean professors, and he would listen with a kindness that made her feel special. "I just finished a double shift, Min," she typed back, a small smile finally appearing on her tired face. "But I still have 50 pages of law to read before I can sleep. I wish I was there to turn the pages for you," Min replied almost instantly. They spent the next hour in their usual routine. He would send her pictures of buildings he was designing, and she would send him voice notes of her reciting legal rules. Yunice didn't care that he was struggling or that he couldn't afford a visitor yet. She loved the man behind the screen, the person who valued her heart and her big dreams. She had no idea that Min was actually Sung-min, the most powerful mafia boss in the country. She didn't know that the sketches he sent were actually blueprints of the massive buildings his family already owned. Most of all, she didn't know that she was the sister he had spent a decade searching for. For Yunice, the phone screen was like a shield. It kept the insults of the rich guests at the hotel from hurting too much. As long as she had Min's words lighting up her phone, she felt like she could handle any challenge. She leaned her head against her book, the soft glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. She felt safe in her small apartment, believing her secret love was just a simple man with big dreams, just like her. She had no idea that the world of power she served every day was about to crash into her digital sanctuary. The next morning, the hotel was busy and loud. The air smelled like expensive flowers and cleaning spray. Murin, the daughter of the rich CEO, was arriving to check the final details for her big wedding. Yunice stood in a straight line with the other workers near the front door. Her feet still hurt from working all night, but she was thinking about the sweet messages Min had sent her. She kept her phone hidden in her apron pocket. It felt like a small, warm treasure. She just had to get through this one meeting with the VIP guest, and then she could go home to her books and her digital love. The glass doors pushed open, and Murin walked in. She looked perfect. Her hair was in a neat bun, and her white suit looked like it cost more than Yunice would earn in 10 years. But as she got closer, she didn't seem kind. She didn't look at the staff like they were people. She looked at them like they were furniture that was in her way. "The lights in here are ugly," Murin snapped. She didn't say hello to anyone. She walked past the manager and threw her expensive bag, a young waiter. The boy scrambled to catch it and almost fell down. Murin didn't say thank you. She just pointed a finger at a tiny spot on a window. "Clean that. It looks cheap, just like everything else in this lobby." The workers moved like shadows, trying to stay out of her reach. Murin marched into the ballroom, shouting orders about the flowers and the tables. She was a woman who was used to being the boss, and she liked making people feel afraid. Yunice was told to bring a tray of cold water to the small table where Murin was sitting. As Yunice leaned over to set the glass down, her phone vibrated in her pocket. The screen lit up through the thin fabric of her apron. At that exact moment, Min had sent her a new photo. It was a clear, handsome picture of him smiling. Murin's sharp eyes caught the glow. Before Yunice could move, Murin reached out and snatched the phone right out of the apron pocket. "No phones while you're working for me," she hissed. But as Murin looked at the screen to turn it off, she froze. Her face turned white, then red with anger. She recognized the man in the photo instantly. It wasn't a struggling architect. It was Sung Min, the powerful man she was supposed to marry in a few days. Murin looked up at Yunice, seeing her properly for the first time. She saw the pretty face, the kind eyes, and the nobody waitress uniform. A wave of pure hate washed over her. She realized that this girl, someone she thought was trash, held the heart of the king she wanted to own. "You," Murin whispered, her voice shaking with rage. She gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "Who are you to him?" Yunice reached for her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. "That's my boyfriend, Nam. Please give it back." Murin let out a mean, cold laugh. She didn't give the phone back. Instead, she dropped it into a half-full glass of water on the table. She watched the screen flicker and go dark. "He isn't your boyfriend. He is a king, and you are nothing. And by tomorrow, you won't even exist in this city." After Murin walked out of the ballroom, the air felt cold and heavy. Yunice stood frozen, staring at the glass of water where a phone lay dead. She reached in with shaking hands to grab it, but the screen stayed black. The silence in the room was even scarier than Murin's yelling. The other workers looked away, too afraid to help her or even make eye contact. A few minutes later, the hotel manager walked up to Yunice. Usually, he was a kind man, but now his face was pale and stiff. "Yunice, give me your key card and your name tag," he said, his voice low. "You are fired. Effective immediately." Yunice felt like the floor was falling away. "Fired? Because of a phone? Sir, I've never missed a shift. I need this job for my law school tuition." The manager wouldn't look at her. "It's not just about the phone. Orders came from the CEO's office. You need to leave now, or security will escort you out." Yunice stumbled to the locker room, her heart hammering in her chest. She tried to swipe her key card to open her locker, but the light turned red. She tried again, pressing the plastic card against the sensor until her fingers hurt. Nothing happened. It was as if the system didn't recognize she existed anymore. She had to beg a security guard to open the door just so she could grab her old sneakers and her heavy law books. As she walked out of the hotel, she told herself she could find another job. She was a top student. Surely another restaurant or hotel would hire her. But as she walked down the street to a small cafe that was hiring, things got worse. "I'm sorry," the cafe owner said after looking at her ID. "I just got an alert on the city business network. You've been flagged for gross misconduct and theft. I can't hire you. No one in this district will." Yunice felt a wave of terror. Morin hadn't just fired her. She was erasing her ability to survive. Panicked, Yunice went to an ATM to withdraw the little money she had saved for her rent. She pushed her bank card into the machine and typed her code. "Account flagged. Please contact your branch." The screen shouted in bright red letters. She tried again, tears stinging her eyes. All her hard work, the double shifts, the missed meals, it was all locked away behind a screen she couldn't control. Morin had used her father's power to reach into every part of Yunice's life. In just 1 hour, Yunice had gone from a hopeful law student to a ghost. She had no job, no money, and no way to call men for help. She stood on the busy sidewalk as people brushed past her, feeling completely invisible. Every system she had trusted to build her future was now slamming its doors in her face. Morin had promised to make her not exist, and she was keeping that promise. Yunice hugged her heavy law books to her chest, the only thing she had left, and realized she wasn't just losing her job. She was being deleted from the world she had worked so hard to join. Yunice sat on a cold park bench, her dead phone gripped tightly in her hand. She had tried everything to make it turn on, but the water damage from the night before was final. Desperate, she spent her last few coins at a public payphone to call the only number she had memorized, Min's. She waited with a racing heart, hoping to hear his warm, steady voice. But instead of a ring, a flat, mechanical voice spoke into her ear. "The number you are trying to reach has been restricted. Please contact your service provider." Yunice felt the blood drain from her face. Morin hadn't just broken her phone. She had used her father's connections to disconnect Yunice's entire digital life. It was a total blackout. She was cut off from the only person who made her feel safe, left completely alone in a city that was quickly turning into a cage. Without money for rent or food, Yunice had to make a choice. She couldn't wait for a miracle. She walked until the shiny glass buildings of the city center turned into gray, crumbling concrete. In the basement of an old industrial building, she found a job at an underground canteen. It was a dark, windowless room that smelled of old grease and coal smoke. It wasn't a luxury hotel. It was a place for workers who didn't want to be found. The men here had rough hands and hard eyes, and they didn't care about law degrees. Yunice traded her clean waitress uniform for a stained apron and began washing heavy iron pots in water that was never hot enough. While Yunice disappeared into the shadows, a fleet of black SUVs pulled into the city's most expensive private airport. Sungmin stepped out of the lead car, his presence instantly commanding the attention of everyone on the tarmac. To the world, he was the king of the underworld returning to claim his throne through a massive wedding merger. He looked like power incarnate, but inside, he felt a strange, cold void. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, checking it for the 10th time in an hour. There was nothing. No voice notes of Yunice reciting her law books. No blurry photos of her dinner. No good morning messages that usually gave him the strength to face his dark business. For a year, her voice had been his only light, a soft melody that kept his soul from turning completely to stone. Now, there was only silence. "Is there a problem with the network?" Sungmin asked, his voice a low growl that made his lead guard flinch. "No, sir. The systems are all clear," the guard replied quickly. Sungmin stared at the city skyline. He was only a few miles away from where Yunice lived, but he felt like she had vanished into thin air. He knew her schedule by heart. She should have been finished with her shift at the hotel by now. She never went this long without checking in. A dark feeling began to grow in his chest, a protective instinct that had kept him alive in the Mafia for years. Back in the underground canteen, Yunice scrubbed a pot until her knuckles bled. The steam from the large vats of soup rose around her like a thick fog, making her feel like a ghost haunting a forgotten hallway. She looked at her reflection in the dirty water and barely recognized the girl who had dreams of being a lawyer. She was tired, she was hungry, and she was scared. But as she thought of men, she didn't realize that the man she loved was currently tearing the city apart with his eyes, looking for the light that Murin had tried to put out. The silence between them was loud, and for Sung Min, it was the most dangerous sound in the world. Sung Min's car pulled up to the luxury hotel where Yunice used to work. He stepped out, his long black coat fluttering in the wind. He didn't look like the sweet architect Min anymore. He looked like a man who owned the shadows of the city. He walked in the lobby, and the air seemed to get colder. He marched straight to the manager's office. The manager, the same man who had fired Yunice, stood up quickly. He was sweating and his hand was shaking. He had already taken a bribe from Murin to lie, but standing in front of Sung Min was different. It was like standing in front of a hungry tiger. "Where is Yunice?" Sung Min asked. His voice was very quiet, but it was more terrifying than a shout. I don't know who that is, sir," the manager stammered. "We have no one by that name. You must have the wrong hotel." Sung Min leaned over the desk. He didn't blink. "I know she works here. I know she wears a blue uniform and carries a silver tray. I know she studies law in the break room. Do not lie to me again." The manager swallowed hard. He looked at the computer, then back at Sung Min. "Sir, I'm telling the truth. I checked the system. Her name isn't there. It's like she never existed." Sung Min reached out and grabbed the employee book from the desk. He flipped through the pages with his strong hands. He saw the spot where Yunice's name should have been. It was empty. It was perfectly white. Someone had used a computer to delete her, and someone had used a pen to scratch her out of the paper books. A cold fury began to burn in Sung Min's heart. He realized this wasn't an accident. This was an attack. Someone was trying to kill the memory of the woman he loved. He walked out of the office and stood in the middle of the gold lobby. He looked at the cameras, the guards, and the expensive flowers. He realized that this whole place was a trap. He pulled out his phone and made one call to his men. "Find out who paid the manager today," Sung Min ordered, "and find out where they sent the girl. If anyone touches a hair on her head, I will pull this city apart brick by brick." While he spoke, a small piece of paper fell from a trash can near the service door. It was a ripped piece of a law book, the kind Yunice always carried. Sung Min picked it up. He saw her handwriting in the corner. She had been here. She had been hurt. And now, he was going to find out who was responsible. Sung Min stood in the service hallway, his eyes burning as he stared at the ripped page from the law book. It was a page about justice, and the corner was damp, as if a tear had fallen on it. He knew Yunice wouldn't just throw her books away. This was a cry for help. He looked at the floor and saw faint, gray footprints leading toward the back exit. They weren't from expensive dress shoes. They were the thin, worn-out marks of old sneakers. The marks of someone who had been forced to leave in a hurry. "Check the security cameras for the back alley," Sung Min barked at his lead guard. "Sir, the manager said the cameras are broken for that area," the guard replied, bowing his head. Sung Min's grip tightened on the paper. "They aren't broken. They were turned off." He realized then that the people he was about to join in marriage were the same people trying to destroy his heart. He walked out into the narrow, dark alley behind the hotel. The ground was covered in wet trash and old boxes. He began to search through the bins with his own hands, ignoring the dirt on his silk sleeves. Finally, he found it, a small, broken plastic card. It was Yunice's hotel key card, snapped in half. Beside it was a flyer for the old district canteen. The old district was the most dangerous part of the city. It was a place where people went when they wanted to disappear or when someone wanted to hide them. "She's in the slums," Sung Min whispered, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and rage. He got back in his black SUV, But he didn't head toward the CEO's mansion for the wedding dinner. He pointed toward the gray, crumbling buildings in the distance. "Drive," he ordered, "and tell the men to get ready. We are going into the shadows." As the car sped away, he looked at the half-broken key card. He didn't know yet that the CEO hadn't just fired a waitress. He had kidnapped a mafia princess. Sungmin wasn't just going to find his girlfriend. He was about to find his long-lost blood. The rain was coming down hard when Sungmin's car stopped in the middle of the slums. The street smelled of smoke and wet trash. He didn't wait for his guards to open the door. He stepped out into the mud, his eyes fixed on a rusty metal door that led to a basement. Inside the canteen, the air was hot and thick with steam. It was hard to breathe. Yunice was hunched over a giant iron pot, her back to the door. She was scrubbing so hard that her knuckles were bleeding, her tears mixing with the dirty dishwater. She felt like she was drowning in the dark. Then the heavy door kicked open. The sound was like a thunderclap. The workers and the rough men at the tables froze. Sungmin walked in, looking like a dark king in his expensive suit. He didn't look at the dirt or the smell. He only looked for her. "Yunice," he said. She went perfectly still. She knew that voice. It was the voice from her phone, the voice that told her he was building a world for them. She slowly turned around, her face smudged with soot and her hair damp from the steam. "Min," she breathed. She looked at his fine clothes and the dangerous men standing behind him. "Why are you dressed like that? How did you find this place?" Sungmin walked across the sticky floor and took her red, aching hands in his. He didn't care about the grease or the blood. He pulled her close and felt her heart beating fast against his chest. "I told you I was building a world for us," he whispered into her hair. "But I didn't tell you the whole truth. I am not an architect, Yunice, and you are not a nobody waitress." He pulled back and looked into her eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, burnt photo of a man and a woman. It was the same photo Yunice kept under her pillow. "I've been looking for my sister for 10 years, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I found you, Yunice. I finally found you." Yunice looked at the photo, then at him. The man she loved was the brother she thought she had lost in the fire. The world felt like it was exploding. Before she could speak, the heavy sound of wedding bells began to ring from the cathedrals in the city center. Sungmin's face turned cold as stone. He looked toward the city where Murin was waiting for her wedding. "They tried to bury you in the steam and the dark," he growled. "But today, the whole world is going to see you shine." Sungmin didn't let her stay in that dark basement for another second. He lifted Yunice up, carrying her away from the iron pots and the smell of grease. He put her into the back of his warm, quiet car and drove to a secret house hidden high in the mountains. Inside the house, everything was soft and beautiful. There were piles of silk, sparkling diamonds, and the best doctors to fix her sore hands. Yunice sat by a large window, looking at the city lights. She felt like she was in a dream. She looked at her brother, who was now dressed in a sharp black suit, preparing for the wedding he was about to destroy. "I don't understand, Sungmin," she said, her voice small. "Why did they do this to me? Why did Morin hate me so much?" Sungmin knelt beside her. He took a diamond necklace and placed it around her neck. It was heavy and bright. "They didn't just hate you, Yunice. They were afraid. Our father owned the land this city is built on. When our parents were killed, the CEO stole everything. He thought if he erased you, no one could ever take his money back." He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, Yunice saw the cold fury of a king. "Morin knew who you were. She tried to hide you so she could marry me and keep the stolen empire. She thought she was deleting a waitress, but she was trying to kill a princess." Yunice looked at her reflection in the glass. She wasn't the tired girl in the stained apron anymore. With the makeup and the black silk dress, she looked exactly like the woman in their mother's old photos. She looked powerful. "They took my life, they took my phone, and they tried to take my future," Yunice said, her voice getting stronger. "I don't want to hide anymore, brother." Sungmin smiled. but it was a dangerous smile. He handed her a pair of black lace gloves to hide her red knuckles. You won't have to. The wedding starts in 2 hours. All the cameras in the country will be there. The CEO thinks he is celebrating his woojany. He stood up and held out his hand to her. But today, we aren't going there to celebrate. We're going there to take back what belongs to us. Are you ready to show them that you still exist? Yunice took his hand. She felt the strength of her bloodline flowing through her. Let's go, she said. I have a lot to say to the girl who tried to delete me. The Grand Cathedral was filled with the smell of thousands of white roses. Every rich and powerful person in the city was there, wearing their best clothes and waiting for the wedding of the century. At the front, Murin stood in a white dress that cost a fortune. She was smiling, thinking she had finally won. She had deleted the Waitress, she had the Mafia King, and soon she would have everything. But the smile froze on her face when the heavy oak doors at the back of the room swung open with a loud bang. The music stopped. 1,000 people turned their heads. Some men walked in, but he wasn't walking toward the altar. He was walking beside a woman who looked like she stepped out of a royal painting. It was Yunice. She wore a gown of midnight black that trailed behind her like a shadow. Her head was held high, and the diamonds around her neck sparkled brighter than the cathedral's candles. She didn't look like a girl who scrubbed pots. She looked like the woman who owned the floor she was walking on. The CEO stood up, his face turning a sickly gray. Murin's bouquet of flowers fell from her hands and hit the floor. You, she screamed, her voice cracking in the silent room. How are you here? You're supposed to be dead? Erased? A ghost. Yunice's voice was calm and clear, echoing off the high stone walls. She walked right up to the front, her high heels clicking like a clock, counting down to 0. She stopped in front of the altar and looked at the guest list sitting on the gold podium. She saw the ugly black scratch mark where her name used to be. Yunice picked up the gold pen and, with a steady hand, wrote her name back in, bold, large, and beautiful. You try to delete my name, Murin, Yunice said, looking the bride in the eye. But you forgot that I'm the one who writes the law. Beside her, Sungmin looked at the CEO with eyes like ice. He didn't look like a groom. He looked like a judge. The wedding is over, he announced to the shocked crowd. But the trial for the theft of my family's empire is just beginning. The room exploded into whispers and camera flashes. The nobody Waitress had returned as a queen, and the girl in the white dress was suddenly the one who looked invisible. The CEO tried to laugh, but his voice sounded like dry paper. This is a trick. Guards, get this woman out of here. She's just a crazy servant. But the guards didn't move. They stood like statues because they knew who Sungmin was, and they saw the fire in Yunice's eyes. Yunice didn't stay quiet. She reached into her black silk bag and pulled out a small, silver USB drive. She walked over to the giant projector screen that was supposed to show a video of the happy couple. Instead, she plugged in her drive. I spent years serving you drinks, sir, Yunice said, her voice steady and strong. You thought I was invisible. You thought I was just a ghost in the hallway. But while I was carrying your trays, I was also listening. And while I was cleaning your office, I was reading your files. The screen flickered to life. Suddenly, the entire cathedral saw the truth. It wasn't photos of a wedding. It was a list of bank accounts, hidden contracts, and the proof that the CEO had stolen everything from Yunice's parents after they died. The numbers showed how he had used the lost girl's inheritance to build his hotels and buy Murin's diamonds. The guests gasped. The cameras started clicking faster. Murin grabbed the edge of the altar, her face white with terror. Stop it. Turn it off. I'm a law student, Murin, Yunice said, stepping closer to her. I know how to build a case. You didn't just fire a Waitress. You fired the woman who spent every night studying how to take you down. Every dish I washed was a step toward this moment. Sungmin stepped forward, his shadow falling over the CEO. My sister is a better lawyer than you're a businessman. You stole her past, but you will never touch her future. The CEO looked around the room. He saw his friends turning away. He saw the police waiting at the back of the cathedral. His empire was falling apart in front of the whole world, and it was all because of the girl he thought was nothing. Murin didn't wait for the police. She ripped her expensive white veil from her head, kicked off her heels, and ran out the side door of the cathedral. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she had to get away from the eyes of the city. She grabbed a waiting car and screamed at the driver to go. She thought she could hide at the hotel, the one place she felt like a queen. When she arrived at the luxury hotel, the lobby was quiet. Murin ran toward the private elevator, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She just needed her safe, her passport, and her jewels. But as the elevator doors opened at the top floor, she froze. The penthouse wasn't empty. Yunice was sitting in the large leather chair behind the CEO's desk. She wasn't wearing the black dress anymore. She was wearing a sharp, professional suit. She looked like she had lived in that office her whole life. Beside her, Sung Min was looking out the window, watching the police cars pull into the driveway below. "You're late, Murin," Yunice said softly. She didn't sound angry. She sounded like a judge finishing a long day of work. "This is my father's office. Get out." Murin screamed, but her voice sounded small in the big room. "Actually," Yunice said, standing up and walking around the desk, "I just signed the papers. This building, the staff you bullied, and even the air you're breathing right now. It all belongs to the Min family again. My family." Murin looked at the desk and saw the same gold pen she had used to scratch out Yunice's name. Now, that pen was sitting next to a stack of arrest warrants. "You tried to delete me from the guest list," Yunice said, stopping just inches from Murin. "But I have deleted your name from every bank, every club, and every street in this city. You're the nobody now." Murin slumped to the floor, her white wedding dress turning gray against the carpet. Outside, the sirens grew louder. The girl who had tried to play God was now just a girl in a ruined dress, realized that the waitress she had tried to bury was actually the ground she was standing on. The sun was beginning to rise over the city, turning the gray sky into a bright, hopeful orange. On the highest balcony of the hotel, Yunice and Sung Min stood together, watching the world wake up. The city looked different now. It didn't look like a cage anymore. It looked like a garden they were going to protect. Down below, the last of the police cars drove away. The CEO and Murin were gone, headed to a place where their money and names meant nothing. The total blackout they had tried to trap Yunice in had finally ended, and the light was everywhere. "Are you happy, little sister?" Sung Min asked. He looked at her with a soft smile, the same smile he had used when he was just Min on her phone screen. Yunice looked at her hands. The red scars from the iron pots were fading, but she didn't want them to disappear completely. They were a reminder of where she had been and how hard she had fought to survive. "I'm more than happy," Yunice said, her voice strong and clear. "I'm free. But I don't just want to be a princess, Sung Min. I want to be the lawyer I worked so hard to become. I want to make sure the underground workers and the invisible waitresses have someone to fight for them." Sung Min nodded, looking out at the sprawling streets. "Then we will build a new kind of empire. I will handle the strength, and you will handle the justice. No more secrets, no more deletions." Yunice pulled her new phone from her pocket, a gift from her brother. She didn't have any more messages from Min because the real man was standing right beside her. Instead, she opened a new file on her screen. It was the list of the hotel staff. She didn't look for names to delete. She looked for names to promote. She thought about the girl on the park bench with the dead phone and the broken heart. That girl was gone, but she hadn't been erased. She had evolved. "The black waitress is gone," Yunice whispered to the wind. "The queen is here. And this time, her name is written in stone." As the city hummed to life below, the two siblings turned back toward the office to begin their first day of work. The silence was finally gone, replaced by the sound of a new beginning.